Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Guns of Infinity. So, in the last episode, we managed to escort our Takaran ambassador to the King's army, and now we've linked up with them. And we also met the Lady Wells, and I guess we'll be introduced to her later on, more, I guess, with more detail. At the king's little banquet or dinner that he's gonna have for us, or at least he's supposed to have. So we'll be picking up right there where we left off in chapter 8, wherein the cavalry officer is made familiar with the affairs of those forces commanded by His Majesty, the King. So you must understand, Lord Cassius continues as the liveried grenadiers remove the half empty plates of iced creams and jellies from the table before him. Since the League of Antar feels no standing army, Prince Corbirid's forces qualify as agents of a private citizen. This means that if I am attacked, I could legally defend myself to the full extent of my abilities, as with, say, a footpad or a highwayman. So you see, the Takaran concludes, flashing the table a boyish smile. There's no reason why I cannot accompany your army the next time it sees battle. The uniformed men around the bright lit great hall of the Lord of Solokoval's residence look at each other, wearing expressions of anxiety or exasperation. The dinner had been a slapdash affair. With only a few hours of warning, the king's staff had to scramble to provide for a formal diplomatic banquet. Somehow they had managed to do it in the time it took you to get billets for your squadron, yourself a bath, and change into your full court rig. Still, there had been no time to decorate the hall or invite the local ladies who would have made up the numbers for a formal dance. So instead, the dinner's complement consists only of yourself, Lady Katerina, Countess Wells, Lord Cassius as the guest of honor, and the senior officers of the king's division, of whom only the king himself, resplendent in the uniform of a grenadier colonel, seems entirely composed. Your Excellency, begins a middle-aged man with piercing eyes and florid cheeks, the Earl of Castermaine, commander of one of the king's brigades of foot. I intend no offense, but surely the changing nature of a battlefield means one might never be perfectly safe, regardless of one's personal prowess at arms. My lord, I intend no offense, the Zakarian begins to reply smilingly, but surely one must recognize that I am far from incapable of handling myself on a battlefield. For a moment, the Tyrian officer seems trapped. To agree to the Takaran's self-assessment would be to concede the argument, and to contest it might seem to be an insult, something which neither the king nor Castermaine could very well afford. I must admit that I am in no position to judge His Excellency's abilities, he begins somewhat warily. There is, however, someone present better suited to offer an opinion. Then the Earl turns to you, smiling the sort of grin you might expect a hawk to have upon spotting a mouse. Captain, you've traveled with His Excellency the Ambassador for nearly a month now. Surely one might offer a comprehensive view on the matter after such an extended time in close quarters. In a stroke, Castermaine has turned the burden of reply on you, and away from him. You must admit, it's quite clever. Not that this stops the cold sweat from trickling down your spine as the Takaran ambassador, a dozen colonels, 3 generals of brigade, and His Tyrian Majesty all await your answer. We should not take risks. Surely we might indulge His Excellency for the sake of diplomacy, at least. I would trust His Excellency to handle himself. I'm afraid I have no opinion to offer. I mean, he showed that he can handle himself, so, yeah. He can, yeah, by all means. Lord Cassius eases back in his chair with a grin. You see, at least one of you agrees with me. In any case, said Polycer, the lieutenant colonel of the Lancers, be a chancy thing, ain't it? One man out in the middle of a battlefield, be easy to get lost, be easy to lose 'em. Good God, the way these people speak sometimes. The Takaran lips draw taut. Evidently, he is not quite used to meeting with such resistance. Perhaps a bodyguard could be provided then. It might be easy to lose track of one man, but 50? I am afraid that is easier said than done, Your Excellency, Castermaine answers, his expression one of quiet triumph. We don't have the men to spare for a diplomatic bodyguard. Pardon me if I find that rather difficult to believe, Lord Cassius replies. Does your kingdom not have a population of 6 million? Have you not been conscripting men into your army for the past 3 years? How could 4 dozen men not be spared in such a case? Unfortunately, the problem is rather more complex. The room falls silent as the king finally makes himself heard. It is not so much that we lack fighting men as it is the fact that we lack officers to lead them. He turns his gaze far afield beyond his generals, beyond the colonels, beyond even you. That was the finding of the report of my lady, the Countess of Wales, was it not? Countess Wales, who has swapped her lancer's jacket and riding trousers for a chrysanthemum yellow dress, nods in agreement from where she sits at the other side of the hall. Indeed, your majesty, almost every bane-blooded man in Tierra with the will and means to purchase a commission has done so, but that is not enough. Some infantry battalions in Antara lack even half their complement of officers. The army cannot expand without bane-blooded men, which we do not have, a more intolerable problem, and one which I believe there's a long-term solution for. In the hours before dinner, you had learned of how the Countess of Wales had come to Antar. Orphaned by the death of her father at Blogia, she volunteered her services to Grenadier Square, first as a file clerk, and then as the author of a comprehensive report on the Battle of Blogia, the success of which has evidently propelled her into the job of writing a second report on the present state of the war in Antar. If I'm also not mistaken, these reports are some of the things you can find on Cataphract's website, because I think it's every single month. They release different insights into the world of the Infinite Sea. Sometimes it's reports, sometimes it's background information, all of course written in the lore form of the Infinite Sea lore. So there's one that talks about Kazarosa, there's ones that talk about Katarina, there's ones that talk about observation made by Royal Tierran Intelligence. So I think the report that was just mentioned was actually one of the ones that you can view on Cataphract's website. But I might be wrong about that. If I am, someone please correct me in the comment section. Okay. Thus, you can understand the sudden interest in which Lady Wells' intimation at a solution to Tierra's manpower problem seems to arouse in the powerful men before her. Pressed for elucidation, the normally composed Countess seems oddly hesitant. In my opinion, the problem comes from the fact that many officers are required to administer the army. As a result, there are hundreds of gentlemen of the blood fit for service who command nothing more than an office desk. If these men could be freed from such duties, she falters for a moment, her face pale. All the eyes in the room are upon her now, and she clearly feels it. She inhales deeply, then answers in one breath. I would propose to see these men freed for duty in Antar by replacing them with women. Oh boy, here we go. In a more uncouth place, a public house or bordello, or wherever the poor congregate, Lady Wells' proposed solution would have been answered with furious uproar. Shouting, certainly. The throwing of tables and chairs, perhaps. The sort of chaos fit to bring constables rushing in with clubs and quarterstaves. There's no such disorder here, but you are well bred enough to see the signs of outrage and indignation upon the expression of your fellow gentlemen officers. Full colonels bulge at the collar at their faces as their faces turn red. One looks at Wells as if she has just proposed to murder an infant. Selling officers' commissions to women? Why, that is nonsense, one man finally blurts out to your left, his reflexive revulsion far outpacing his tact. I only propose such a solution given the extremity of our current situation, the Countess replies, her voice firm. If we were able to utilize the talents of our bane-blooded population more efficiently, we could greatly diminish our disadvantage in numbers. By subjecting ladies of gentle birth to military service, a major of the line infantry sputters to your right, his tone incredulous. Would you expect a young lady brought up in a country house, who has been exposed to nothing but embroidery, 3-volume novels, and dances be fit for the decision which might save or condemn hundreds of fighting men? She would have a nervous breakdown in a week. You probably should also train your women and teach your women on other things besides those things. That's kind of your fault, you idiot. Cashtermaine presses the point further. My lady, one must understand that not all of your sex are as resilient as you are, he says, his voice calm, soft, and laced with condescension. To expose the general number of the more innocent sex to the coarse machinery of war is something which would diminish the health and the virtue of Tierran womanhood. So the argument carries on. Lady Wales defends her points well, but with only Lady Katarina for some occasional supporting remark, she is thoroughly outnumbered. Almost every man in the room arrays the same tired old arguments against her. Only the king and Lord Cassius remain silent, the former looking on with affected disinterest, the latter observing the debate with almost lustful attention. That only leaves you. Will you add your voice to the chorus of condemnations? What Lady Wales proposes will tear society apart. The proposal is admirable, but utterly impractical for a kingdom at war. Women officers, surely it's not such a bad idea. Or actually, I would rather like to keep out of this. I mean, look, I'm once again, you would think in this type of dire situation, they would want to turn around and mobilize as many people as they can, no matter the situation. But, you know, here we are trying to be honorable and stuff like that. And sometimes you can't win like that. So, but in this particular case, I think that we probably should be going ahead and, you know, putting the women out there, putting anyone who is fit for service out there. And also, good God, like, give your women education and stuff like that. It's a little stupid that you turn around and doing this. You know, you've put a handicap on yourself unnecessarily, but, you know, whatever. Women officers, surely it's not such a bad idea. Perhaps, you begin, her ladyship. Perhaps, you begin. Her ladyship, the countess's suggestion has some merit. The man sitting to your left, a captain of the Grenadiers, turns to you, wide-eyed. You would defend this nonsense, sir? He asked, his voice incredulous and more than loud enough to gain the rest of the room's attention. They all turn to you, your fellow officers, Lord Cassius, Lady Katarina, Countess Wales, the king. All await your reply. To step back now would be dismounting from a horse at full gallop. Well, not like you have any bloody choice now. Let's see. Surely ladies of the blood deserve the chance to prove themselves equal. We must take the long view. This will be an advantage in a generation. Better Banebloods of whatever sex than giving commissions to the baneless. We can't rely upon the old rules forever. Well, surely ladies of the blood deserve a chance to prove themselves equal. I do like that. But I do also like the long view, because it does show that there's going to be growth. And it also would kind of appeal to Lord Cassius, I think, too, because, of course, since they can live a little bit longer than us, they probably look at us as just young and not wanting to turn around and, you know, think about the bigger picture of things. So that might apply better there. And I have nothing against the Baneless. I mean, I want them to turn around and join in on this as well. So let's try this. In a generation, the Grenadier replies incredulously. In a generation, the question may be irrelevant. The greatest advantage in the world cannot help us 20 years from now if our army is thrown into disarray and the Antari make mincemeat of us next spring. If, comes your immediate reply. Have you so abandoned your faith in Tierran arms as to think that we would be so enfeebled as to render us supine before the enemy? We will win this war, but the question remains, what will happen when we must face the next? The question circulates around the room. You doubt that it will change any minds, but it gives you enough time to catch your breath, gather your arguments, and continue. If we come out of a fight with the League intact, would it not be safe to assume that some might consider us a threat, a rival? What happens when one of the other great powers, one not so divided and ill-governed as an Antar, decides to see us dealt with? Your words have done its work. Your opposition have gone from uniform hostility to a sort of confusion, as they puzzle the implications of what you're saying, just as planned. Allowing Bane-blooded ladies into the king's army would create unrest, that is true. However, when the next crisis comes, such a commitment would also give us the ability to ensure our army is better and more thoroughly led than any in Tierra's history, you declare. One might not think of such a course as proper now, but I assure you, when we are in our old age, our children will thank us for having the courage to embark upon it. By the time you sit down, the men around you are in an animated discussion. From what snatches of talk you can hear, few support your argument. Most try to find something wrong with it. Most fail. From the other end of the hall, the Countess looks at you with approval, and more surprisingly, so does Lady Katerina, with a smile so bright that you are almost sure it is sincere. The Karen ambassador, on the other hand, seems somewhat less happy. Oh shit. Come on. Or maybe he's trying to keep things divided? I mean, I guess that kind of makes sense for them and all their intelligence and stuff. The night begins to wind down after a few minutes. It seems nobody has the stomach to debate such a touchy subject for very long. Soon the king and his generals take their leave, with Lord Cassius in tow. A few minutes later, you note that Lady Katerina and the Countess are gone as well. With both ladies and dignitaries out of the way, the atmosphere relaxes considerably. Left to their own devices, your brother officers unbutton their collars and begin to speak of more informal matters. Some call out for brandy to be brought to the tables, with no ladies present to be offended by the smoke. More than a few of your fellows light up pipes, cigarettes, and great brown cigars. The air soon fills with the rich aroma of tobacco smoke. Already the officers around you are breaking up into small groups to converse with some privacy. Under normal circumstances, you would find some friend or acquaintance and join their circle, but you are new to the king's division. These men are all strangers to you, and you have no companions present to make introductions for you. There seems to be no profit in staying for much longer. You make your excuses and head out into the anteroom, where Marion awaits you with your greatcoat. With your Batman in tow, you head out into the chill and darkened streets. You do not get more than 10 paces from the front gate before you hear a voice to your left. I was wondering when you would find your way out. It is the Countess of Wales, now wrapped tightly in a heavy fur-trimmed cloak, standing before a pair of her house guards. Behind them sits a coach of the heavy Antari sort, perhaps confiscated from one of the local notables. "Shall I have my driver take you to your billet, Sir Darren?" she asked, gesturing at the requisitioned carriage. "Consider it a thank you for your words tonight, as well as an apology for my rudeness at our encounter this morning." She waves one gloved hand at Marion behind you. "Surely your servant can find his way back by himself." Corporal Marion looks at you for instruction. Faced with no choice, you dismiss him with a nod. To refuse such an offer from a Bane-blooded lady, and one coached as an apology, besides, well, your reputation has suffered enough already tonight. Some of your fellow officers no doubt already think you are a dangerous radical, and there is no need for them to think you as cad as well. What? Yeah, my reputation is not great. But, I mean, in the end, I think things will pay off. Liking that discipline, liking that loyalty. A few minutes later, you find yourself sitting across from Lady Wells in her coach as it rattles down Solokovo's cobbled main streets. "It was a very dangerous thing you did back there," the Countess observes as the darkened shapes of buildings pass by the windows. "One does not stake oneself to unpopular opinions before one's king without risking a great deal." She has a point. While you have quite a robust reputation, your actions tonight have no doubt damaged it a great deal. She turns to you, her face outlined only by the faint light of the moon and stars. "So I must ask, why would you place yourself at such risk?" Let's see. "I have held the opinion for quite some time. That is true. I must confess that it was your argument that swayed me. That makes me, I mean, I kind of do want to flirt, but at the same time, it also makes me seem like I didn't have that opinion before here. Let me see. I never tire of fighting tired old men, nor tired old ideas. That makes me sound more radical. I merely spoke hypothetically. That's make me seem kind of on the fence, and my reasons are my own. Well, that doesn't really change anything. Um, yeah, I'll go with the I have held the opinion for quite some time. I think that's a good kind of middle ground, but also acknowledges the fact that I've had the opinion for a while. The Countess's eyebrows rises. You value your convictions so greatly that you would defend them in the face of the mass disapproval of your fellows, your superiors, your king. Her lips curl into a smile. My, but you are brave. You incline your head. You compliment me, my lady. Wells replies with a quirk of her lips. Partially. I also warn you, an excess of bravery is a dangerous thing. In battle, it could see a man wounded or killed. In society, it might do much worse. For a moment, there is not but the sound of carriage wheels rolling over cobblestone. Wells looks away, takes a deep breath, and meets your gaze, her expression set. If you would plan to continue to lend your support to me, to my cause, to entangle your good name with mine, then there is something I must confess, she says. Your mind flashes with possibilities as you steel yourself for the shock of some sudden realization. Does she have some terrible secret? Some great liability? Wells leans in just enough for the patterns of moonlight to shift over her darkened face. What I propose tonight is not but the first step. I would see ladies of the blood become more than file clerks in uniform. She takes a deep breath. I would see women of noble blood lead men into battle in my lifetime. Saints be damned. My lady, I fear that where you would go, I could not follow. Surely there are practical obstacles to such a thing. I would follow any conviction, my lady, so long as it was yours. Oh, okay. Then we are of mind, you and I. Uh, this just makes me sound like I'm just smitten and in love. I think, yeah, I think we are of mind, you and I. The Countess' lips curls into a smile. I had not thought that the officer of the king's army would count among them such a radical, she notes. I would not count myself a radical, my lady, you reply. I'm merely someone who believes that every person born blessed with the aptitude of command which Bane blood brings should be allowed to use it to their full potential, regardless of sex. I would not consider that a radical thought. Will's smile grows wider. Then we are of mind, sir. The coach lurches to a stop. Wells peers into out the window for a moment. We've arrived, she announces. The coach rocks on its springs as the dark shadow of the driver gets up from his seat, walks around to the side of the carriage, and reaches for the door. Your billet should be just across the street. The Countess says as the door on your side of the closed compartment opens. As you step out onto the street, she offers you the back of one hand, the white kid skin of her glove glowing pale blue in the light of the moon and stars. I very much hope, sir, that we shall soon meet again, she says earnestly as your lips brush the soft leather of her gloved knuckle. As I you reply. Good evening, my lady. Good evening, Draken, she answers. Then, with a bright smile on her lips, she is gone, her coach rattling away, leaving you alone before the darkened entrance to your quarters. Interesting. So it seems like we might even have a bit of romance here. Possibly, just thought, maybe, possibly. But yeah, we'll see how things go. As you walk the short distance to your billet, your mind is occupied by the thoughts of the outspoken young Lady Wells. You cross the street, boot spurs cluttering against the cobblestone, still lost in thought. As the chill night wind plucks at the hem of your greatcoat, you think upon your encounter with the Countess on this day, binding each facet of an impression together. By the time you reach your door, you've come to a singular conclusion. Lady Wells has captivated me utterly. I must see her again, and soon. Alright, chill out. Calm down. I rather think we shall get along famously, Lady Wells and I. And that's more like it. To become an intimate of the Countess would serve my ambitions quite well indeed. All right, now calm down calm down the ambitious talk. To me, the lady seems no more or less charming than most. That's kind of rude. Saints be damned if I have never met a more unpleasant woman in my life. Okay, definitely not that. I think I'm gonna go with this. It treads a nice little middle ground, and it makes me not seem like an ambitious dick. So there's that. You come to the realization that you are quite taken by the young noblewoman, for you find in her the best qualities of Tierran womanhood, from her sharp mind to her handsome features, to her willingness to speak her mind, standing up for what is right. Certainly, there can be no harm in continuing to associate with such a bright young lady further. That that night you sleep well, knowing that you have found in the Countess a woman, a mind, and a fellow Bane blood worth befriending. And she's a countess, you get married, that can kind of help out later on. Hint, hint, wink, wink in another game. The town of Solokovo had fallen without a fight. The king's division had reached the town in the summer of the previous year. Faced with an army of 12,000 men, the lord of the city had only been able to muster a few hundred ill-armed serfs to man the town's archaic walls. Ultimately, the man had wisely chosen honorable surrender over suicide, sparing his people and his town the gallery of horrors which was to be visited upon Caringia not 2 months later. As a result, the king's division was able to take the town intact, without a single shot fired. It was a damn fortunate thing in more ways than one. Solokovo is only a fraction of the size of Caringia, and even with every house undamaged and much of the original population driven out, space is at an absolute premium. Your own quarters are nothing more than a pair of rooms in what you suppose had once been the house of some prosperous freeholder or other. Your new bedroom is cramped and bare compared to the luxurious quarters you had enjoyed in Caringia, but to your lieutenants, who must make do with one room each, or your enlisted men, packed into single houses by the dozen, the very privilege of even having a separate bedroom is an extravagant luxury. However, it is the other room given over to your use, your office, in which you spend almost the whole of your waking hours, bound to your desk while your subordinates range out from the town in accordance with his Tierran Majesty's grand plan. The king, it seems, has taken Solokovo for a specific reason, namely the fact that the town lies a mere 35 kilometers south of what had once been Prince Korobir's main camp at the town of that place. Though the bulk of Korobir's forces have long gone south to retake Caringia, you are quickly made aware that the Antari continue to route their supplies through their former base. That is apparently why the king has ordered the Antari remaining in that place to be placed under constant watch by all the available squadrons of cavalry under his command, which now includes yours. For the duration, the 3 troops commanded by your lieutenants have been broken up into individual patrols, sent off on vedette duty, while you must remain in Solokovo with your 2 remaining troops held in reserve for any eventuality or crisis. However, that hardly means that you have any time for leisure. As a squadron commander, detached from your regiment, you are responsible for both managing your subordinates' patrol schedules and keeping your command fed, supplied, and equipped. While the men under your command ride out to spy upon the enemy, you spend the day spying nothing but the endless stream of requisition forms, notices, and memoranda which Marion brings to your desk. As the weeks pass and summer grows sweltering hot, your subordinates lead their men out on daring sortie after daring sortie, while you are left behind to deal with the paperwork. Let's see. I had hoped Squadron Command to be more dash and heroics and less sign on the dashed line. That is true. You had such high hopes when you assumed command of your squadron, yet it seems that aside from a few brief interludes in the saddle, you spent the entirety of your time since your promotion to captain wielding a pen, not a saber. Worse yet, your subordinate officers, men who do not have half your combat experience, are leading your dragoons on patrols which take them within eyesight of the enemy, risking their lives and displaying their valor while you sit uselessly at your desk. It is infuriating, utterly infuriating. One day, early in the afternoon, when the day is at its hottest, your smell your small office receives an unexpected visitor. Good day, Sandoral. You manage with some confusion as you look up to see your bespectacled subordinate slip through the door. You know that the reedy lieutenant's next patrol isn't due to depart for another 2 days, so what is he doing here? Sir, he begins, tucking at his collar. Might I speak to you about rescheduling my next assignment? You are not much enamored of that idea. To reshuffle the patrol schedule would mean a great deal of paperwork would have to be redone. I trust you have a good reason for it. Your subordinate mops at his brow with the tail of his uniform's cravat. Yes, sir. Her ladyship, the Countess of Wales, is holding a salon 3 days hence, and I would like to be present. Already, you can feel your eyes narrowing and the blood rushing to your face. You received an invitation as well, but at least you knew better than to shirk your duties as a king's officer in order to attend. What makes Sandoval think that he can do otherwise? I assure you, sir, it's not a social event, the nervous young lieutenant adds hurriedly. There is to be a discussion of reforms in the military doctrine based on the lessons we have learned in the past few years campaigning. You have my word, sir. My interest is purely in the opportunity to develop my abilities as a king's officer. In hindsight, that does seem like something a fellow like Sandoval would hold great interest in, not to mention something which is likely to sharpen your intellectual subordinate's head for command. However, that does not necessarily mean that you're willing to rearrange 3 troops worth of patrols just so Sandoval might spend an afternoon discussing tactics. Does it? I'll not up in the entire patrol schedule just so that one junior officer might attend the salon. There, well, I shall humor you this once, but I'll not do it again, or I can consider it done. Well, I mean, he is the learned type, so maybe it would be good for him to go. I mean, I don't think my men would lie to me at this point, or at least not one of my officers, not one of the lieutenants. I'll allow it. Sandoval breaks out into a wide smile, a mix of joy and relief. Thank you, sir, he blurts out. I shall have Lieutenant Blaylock take your patrol, and you may have the one after, you reply, already visualizing the new schedule in your head. I shall arrange the paperwork tonight. Yes, sir, your subordinate replies, his expression animated with a singular excitement. Thank you again, sir. You catch yourself smiling a little. In his current state, Sandoval resembles nothing less than a bespectacled puppy being offered a bone. Saints above, had you been like him once? You're welcome, Lieutenant, you say, still smiling. Dismissed. Oh, good for him. Maybe he'll learn something of value that will help me out later on and prevent me from getting killed. Rearranging the patrol schedule proves to be a daunting task. First, you have to order Marion to the king's headquarters to request that the previously submitted schedule be cancelled. Then you must fill in a new schedule and all of the attached forms that must go with it. You spend the evening informing your subordinates and fielding the angry yet entirely understandable complaints. Fielding the angry yet entirely understandable complaints that soon issue from the officers and men whose liberty must be cancelled in order to accommodate Sandoval's request. In the end, it is nearly midnight by the time you are finished. When you go to bed, you are happy enough just to have the matter dealt with. Alas, your relief proves premature. The first ugly rumors regarding Wales Salon reach your ears the day after Sandoval leaves for his belated patrol. It appears that when the group of mostly young junior officers met to discuss the state of the king's army, the tenor of their discussion quickly turned insubordinate. According to the officers' club gossip related to you by your other lieutenants, the attendees spoke of an end to the purchase of commission, forcing prospective officers to attend training schools like common clerks, and even of the abolishment of the regimental system, ideas fit to give the more hidebound senior officers of the king's army apoplexy. Okay. Sure, that'll work. The fact that one of your subordinates was present will no doubt not do much good for your reputation. Crap. Few things say that one is incapable of controlling one's own subordinates, like being in command of a known radical. Worse yet, when Sandero reports in from his patrol, he eagerly informs you of his intentions to attend a second meeting. It shall be next Tuesday, sir, he relates to you, oblivious to your darkening expression. As I return from my next patrol on the Monday, I'll not need to request another reordering of the patrol schedule, so I hope you have no objections to my going. On the contrary, your attendance of the salons must stop. I have no objection. You may attend if you relate to me the substance of the discussions afterwards. That might actually help my stats out. Oh, it didn't do that much of a reputation damage. Yeah, sure. But, yeah. I need you to tell me what's going on, though. You've taken all three of your lieutenants under your wing. Oh, okay, cool. That's nice. Sandro breaks out into a broad grin. Of course, sir. I'm sure you will find it all very fascinating. You know, I didn't even honestly think about that. I didn't think about the fact that, yeah, we've had events with all three of our commanders. I mean, all three of our lieutenants. So, perhaps you will, but more importantly, you find it an excellent compromise. Sandro will still be able to attend his precious salon, while you will be able to catch any dangerous or insubordinate ideas that your guileless subordinate might be exposed to long before they have time to take root. If your lieutenant shows any sign of catching on to the thought of process behind your decision, he gives no indication of it. He's still beside himself with joy when you dismiss him. Perhaps he will be less pleased when he realizes exactly how much damage he is doing to his good name by attaching himself to the growing rumors of a cabal of radicals within the king's division. Then again, you don't have much reason to be pleased about that either. Your reputation will no doubt suffer for it as well. As promised, Sandro returns to you on the evening of the following Tuesday, bursting with enthusiasm. Over a bottle of brandy, he summarizes the topics of the salon's discussion. While he does touch upon some controversial issues, the majority of what he recounts to you seems rather more like reform than revolution. The further development of dedicated line infantry, new systems of battlefield communication using signaling mirrors, a scheme to preserve fruit for armies in the field by sealing it in glass bottles. All very solid ideas in your mind. As for Sandero, he appears to enjoy discussing the ideas brought to the surface by Wales's salon quite thoroughly, so much so that he seems more than happy to offer to return again to speak further when you have some time to spare from your desk work. You see no reason to refuse. Interesting. So we're talking about God, what is it called? Well, basically like when you're preserving things in jars. I can't think of the term for it right now. But it does seem like we're kind of moving towards like pre-industrialization, like right before it. So I kind of wonder if in some of the later games we're gonna have industrial era level, military stuff, or even maybe cities and stuff. Maybe you'll get things like trains and blimps and stuff like that. Who knows? Maybe I'll be able to fund a not Wright brothers in the game. Weeks pass, the days grow longer and hotter, and still the king sits within the walls of Solokoval with the bulk of his troops. Every day you continue to arrange and send out fresh scouting parties in the morning and receive the reports of returning ones in the afternoon. Every time, the news is the same. The Antari forces at that place remain encamped before the city, unmoving. Meanwhile, the news from the south grows more and more dire. Prince Corabir has invested and almost encircled Fort Karen, while the bulk of his army faces the Duke of Havenport's entrenched regiments across a stretch of river north of Coringia. A battle of reckoning seems only to be a matter of time. At the end of your second month in Solokoval, something else comes from the south as well. Mail. Most of the letters are very ordinary sort. Receipts from your banker, a few routine letters from home, back copies of the Otoria Gazette, letters for your subordinates, which must be routed through their commanding officer, meaning you. In other words, nothing out of the ordinary. What does catch your notice is the date on one of the letters. It is then that you realize that it has been over 3 years since you were promoted to captain. You now have the seniority to buy a promotion. to major as soon as you gather the funds. The elevation in rank wouldn't bring you any immediate benefits save a marginal increase in pay, but it would certainly open up opportunities in the future, not to mention allow you to begin piling up seniority for your next step up the table of ranks. It would be a simple matter to write the Duke of Canaris in Thuringia. Surely he could quite easily prevail upon Lieutenant Colonel Keene to sell his old major's commission to you. Well, of course I can't do anything about that now. I don't have the money for it. I only have 368 wealth. So I've been sending the rest of that to my folks. But I'm pretty sure by the end of the game, I'll probably end up being a major anyway, because I'm pretty sure there's going to be a big battle, and I will do well if I don't get killed, and I'll get promoted anyway. So, with things the way they are, you would rather save your money and your effort. There will be other opportunities to buy a promotion, better ones. You are patient enough to wait for them. All that remains is one letter on the bottom of the pile. A sea-stained thing of folded volume, held closed by the seal of the hunters of Wolf's Wood. Sir Darren, I write to thank you for pledging your support to our most noble cause, and to inform you, sir, of the events which have come to pass in the years since my previous letter. The past few months have been ones of great progress. I have been truly proud to know that Enrique, so dear to me, was also beloved by so many of this country's great and good. Many have flocked to us, as you have, pledging their support to see the legacy of our great and ancient house preserved. Soon we will begin the process of elevating my lost son to sainthood in earnest. It is here that I must regret to inform you that I would require a favor of you. The process that stands before us is one which shall require a great sum of money, far more than what the depleted coffers of our house can afford. Any donation which you might be able to offer would aid our cause substantially. Again, I thank you for the support you have shown thus far, and I remain Lady Frederica de All Hunter, Dowager Viscountess of Wolfswood. The process of elevating someone to sainthood is not a cheap one. Land must be bought, a vigil flame must be set up, men must be hired to guard it. It is an endeavor beyond the means of all but the wealthiest noble houses. Thus, it is hardly extraordinary for the Dowager Viscountess to be asking for financial assistance from those who have already pledged their support. The question is, can you afford to send any? I am not sending 250 crowns. I only have 300 and something. Sure, 50 crowns would be a fair donation for a man in my position. You write a reply to the Dowager Viscountess, reaffirming your support and informing her of your donation. In the grand scheme of things, the sum you have decided to send is a decidedly modest one, but you are no great power of the realm with thousands of crowns to spare. You are merely a poor baron's son and a soldier of middling rank. The dowager would be presumptuous indeed if she had expected more out of you. With your reply finished, you draft a second letter, this time to your banker in Atoria, ordering him to transfer the necessary funds and draw up the required bank draft. This done, you fold and seal both messages, setting them aside to be sent tomorrow morning. You have work still to do before the day is done, and it's best you do it, lest tomorrow's patrols set out without ammunition or rations. The next day, you return to the business as usual. Despite ever more dire news from Havenport's division in the south, the king persists in ordering more seemingly pointless scouting missions. The endless mind-numbing routine is wearing on your subordinates as well. Every time they return, they seem more surly, more short-tempered. The frustration begins to show on their faces. Every time you hand them orders to ride to the same vantage point along the same roads and recon the same points. It is at a working breakfast on one of the rare occasions when all three of your lieutenants are not on patrol that they finally give voice to their anger. I'm beginning to think the king has no idea what he's doing, Blaylock growls, a step short of the fine line between bluntness and sedition as he glowers behind his plate of lamb cutlets. We've been riding about in circles for 10 weeks now. making ourselves useless while Havenport faces off against Corobirit's entire bloody army. I'm sure His Majesty's got a plan, Blaylock. Lord Renard drawls as he sits back, gently swirling the last mouthful of claret in his glass. Though I ain't the slightest idea what it be. Whatever it is, I hope the king finds its results worth the running all of his cavalry into the ground. Thanero interjects, the soft-spoken officer voice edged with a tired frustration. This constant patrolling is sapping the men of their energy and their patience. Your officers turn to you, the weariness plain on their faces, tacitly soliciting your opinion. Oh, great, thanks. His Majesty has a plan, and we must have faith in it. I share your sentiments, gentlemen, but we must remain patient. The king's plan better be brilliant for all the grief he's putting us through. I fear Blaylock's suspicion may have some merit. I'm not gonna be like that because, word tends to travel fast, and I don't want the king hearing about this. Let's see. I don't want to be overconfident either. So, well, I guess I could say I share your sentiments, gentlemen, but we must remain patient. Then again, that might affect my morale. Shit. This would be seditious. And that would definitely be seditious. Well. Let's just try and stay positive. Good God. Blaylock shakes his head. If you want me to have faith in the king's plan, sir, then best you produce some sign that it actually exists, he growls. You ain't have faith in the saints either, then, Lord Renard challenges, an instant before you are able to give voice to your own rebuke. The saints are real, Blaylock replies. The apotheosis of Saint Stanislaus is a matter of historical record, and your lieutenant's voice turns sardonic. And when the king's purported plan is seen ascending bodily into the heavens upon wings of fire, I'll have faith in it too. A glance at your watch tells you that time is short. Sandero is due to depart with his patrol in less than half an hour. Leaving fruitless speculation behind, you spend the next few minutes outlining patrol orders, an activity perhaps just as fruitless, seeing as they remain unchanged from the week before, and the week before that, with only the details of the routes changed. When you dismiss the meeting, Sandero, with only 10 minutes left to get his horse tacked up, is out the door almost immediately. More slowly, your other two lieutenants follow him out, leaving you alone with your work once more. The weeks continue to pass, the patrols grind on, and the Antari summer somehow continues to unexpectedly get even hotter. Their squadron flags under the constant strain which the king's pitiless orders put them through. Men and horses both begin to sicken. It is not uncommon for your dragoons to return from your sorties, all listless with heat exhaustion, atop mounts on the verge of collapse. The men recover quickly enough. You are able to get even the worst affected back up to fighting trim by replacing them with a fellow from one of your reserve troops for a few days. The horses are another matter. Not all can be saved, and every week you must set out to the quartermaster's office to replace your lost mounts. You return from one such trip to find a fresh stack of mail upon your desk. The first 3 letters are hardly worth noticing. The 4th is stamped with your family seal. You tear open the wax as you sit down at your desk, already anticipating the news of fresh developments from your father. You read the first sentence. No, that cannot be right. You read it again as clammy fingers climb up your spine and grip your mind with cold, impossible certainty. Sir? The sound of your staff sergeant's urgent voice pulls you out of your dire, galloping thoughts. Staff, you manage to reply. What is it? The king's just called a staff meeting for all officers commanding battalions and squadrons. Lansra reports. We're attacking the city. I'd bet my stripes on it. Well, oh boy, and it seems that our father has died, so we're going to have to turn around and deal with that in the next chapter. I guess at the very least, I can go ahead and read the letter. My son, your father is dead. If it might offer any consolation at all, one might take solace in the fact that the end was a quick and quiet one, taken suddenly in his sleep. The Bane healer spoke of an aberration within his heart as the cause, one that would not have been found before it had done its terrible work. I cannot imagine the depths of the sorrow with which you will receive this unhappy news. I know that of all men you held your father in the greatest of esteem. You might rest assured in knowing that your love and devotion was returned in equal measure. Broomberg is yours now, as much a part of you as your heart and spirit. Your father often expressed his confidence in your abilities, that he could have no worthier successor. I have faith in the truth of his words, just as he did. You have already made him proud, my dearest boy, and you will make him prouder yet. I am sure of it. I have the honor to remain your mother. All right, so in the next chapter, chapter 9, wherein the cavalry officer is made aware of several momentous developments, we're starting to get closer towards the end, so it seems. It seems like we're basically at the penultimate tour, right before things finally reach their conclusion. I don't know how it's going to turn out. It's been a long time since I played it. I do think there are two different missions, if I'm not mistaken, as far as the ending goes. And they're very different depending upon your character, and then there are variations upon that. But again, that's where we'll pick up off in episode 9. So yeah, we'll see how certain things turn out. So if you like the video, like the video. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe. I have a lot of things on the channel, and I will have many other things in the future. If you have any questions, comments, concerns, please leave them in the comment section, and I will respond back as quickly as I can. And I will see you in the next one. See ya.